Hi, my name is David Snyder, and welcome to Fearless Confidence. Today we're going to be discussing one of the topics that people find the most, they're in the most need of, for lack of a better word. We're going to talk about confidence only briefly, primarily because over the years, as I've worked with clients both in clinic, in live events and trainings, and one-on-one in various applications, everything from dating and attraction to negotiation and mediation to even kinesic interview and interrogation techniques. The one thing influencers of all kinds tend to focus on is this need for confidence. But what I've discovered after really just kind of burrowing below the surface into the subject of confidence, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be confident, but what I am saying is that what most people think of as confidence is really just fear. More often than not, when you're hearing somebody say, I need to be more confident, I want to have more confidence, what they're really saying on a functional level is that I just want to stop being afraid. And so today we're going to talk about we're going to start with some very quick and very powerful tactical ways that you can stop being afraid and start entering that confidence zone in as little as 2 minutes, right? If you find yourself in a situation or a circumstance where you've been knocked off of your game, for lack of a better word, or you need to be on your game going in. We're going to share with you some very, very specific tactical approaches that you can begin to install and utilize right away. If you've done nothing but watch the first 5 or 10 minutes of this video and you had these 1 or 2 techniques, you could go out and significantly improve your performance in any theater of influence, whether that's self-influence, whether that's influencing a man or woman to go out with you, whether that is walking into the trial or courtroom, the voir dire room. As I like to say in all my trainings and things like that, these techniques are universal. They will help you in every field of endeavor, from the courtroom to the classroom to the boardroom to the bedroom and all points in between. So the first thing I want to talk to you about when talking about confidence is I want to talk to you about something I call the mind-body feedback loop. Now, most of us in the self-help world, the self-development world, we know that there's a feedback loop that exists between our mind and our body. But what a lot of us don't really understand, or what a lot of people don't really understand, is how do we influence that in a more bulletproof way? What most people teach us is that we need to exert our willpower to control our mental and emotional state. And that's okay, except that when you find yourself in high stress environments, when you find yourself in situations and circumstances that activate the level of emotional arousal within you, which is another way of saying stress. And fear is just a more extreme form of stress. Anxiety, just in a more middle ground between extreme fear and just tension form of stress. All of these things are on the fear continuum. So one of the things that we have to understand is that the way your brain works and the way your neurology works is that the more stress that enters your body, the more it has to manage that stress, the more rapidly your conscious mind checks out, the more it loses its ability to function and control that state effectively. So unless you're one of those special people who is trained as a first responder, someone who's a highly trained military person, somebody who is an extreme athlete, somebody who's used to functioning in these high stress, high level environments, you're going to find out more often than not that the environment is what will count against you, and your ability to control and manage that state and be confident is going to work against you. It's not going to be as accessible if you rely on strictly your willpower. Now, I'm not going to get into my whole dissertation on willpower versus physiological state control. Instead, we're going to jump right into some tactical things that we can start to begin to apply right away. And I'm going to give you some resources. I'm going to give you some things that you can begin to experiment and explore on your own. The first one I want to talk to you about is, again, this goes back to this whole mind-body feedback loop. The mind-body feedback loop works like this on a functional level. All science aside, this is how you make it work. For every psycho-emotional state that you have, and fear is a psycho-emotional state, for every mood that you're in. Depression is a mood. In future videos, we'll be talking about how to use your physiology and your posture to alleviate depression. Anxiety, fear, these are all states, but each and every one of those states has a corresponding physiology, a corresponding posture. a breathing pattern, that when you change that physiology, you change your posture, you can't maintain your state any longer. Now, normally, if you were in my class, if you were in my training that you see on YouTube, or in my trainings like CPI, where we're teaching killer influence, or we're teaching covert hypnosis or conversational persuasion and influence, we would spend an entire day, practically, on just learning how to do all of those things. Now, obviously, in the short video that we have, I have to skip a lot of steps. But my goal here is to give you exactly the tools you need to start performing better today, as well as giving you a special set of processes that over time, sometimes immediately, sometimes over a few sessions, will dramatically change your internal world. The fears and the triggers that you carry inside of you will simply begin to go away. They'll begin to diminish. But that's coming in the second part of our video. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to understand a few key concepts. Hey, your mind and your body are linked, and the fastest, most powerful way to change that is to change your posture and your breathing. Now, most people who come to a hypnotist, who come to a neurolinguistic programmer, they're going to give you a progressive relaxation induction. They're going to guide you and teach you how to relax each and every part of your body, and that's great. But you can't do that out on the street. You can't do that in a crowded bar. You can't do that in the courtroom. You need something that you can apply right away. I'm going to teach you two very powerful techniques that you can just start going out and making changes with and start getting effects right away. And then we're going to go into what I call the shit clearing process. Now, in World According to David, shit has a very special meaning. Secret human influence technologies. And these are ways that we're going to go in and we're going to clean up all the things that used to make you afraid, all the things that used to make you hold yourself back, all the things that used to trigger you to not do the things you want to do and to feel naturally more confident. Because being confident is your birthright. But you don't need confidence in the way that the self-help community teaches us to be confident in order to be successful. And for the purposes of this video, I'd like us to think of confidence using David's definition rather than the one you might pick up in the dictionary or in some of these other self-help trainings. I want you to think of the word confidence to mean a sense of relentless determination combined with a positive expectation or the expectation of a positive result. You see, you don't need to be confident to be successful. You have to have a strong desire and a relentless determination to make it happen. And when you combine that with a strong positive expectation or a strong expectation of a positive outcome, now you have all the things that come together to form functional confidence. And there's no top limit to that, right? A lot of times when we as practitioners create mental movies, we're creating movies in our head, but we're not really affecting the body. And my friend, the one thing that we need to affect more than anything else is your body. We need to get that meat suit going, for lack of a better word. And so some of the most powerful change work will involve getting your body involved. So if you bought this video hoping to just kind of kick back, go into a vegetative state, and just let the words flow in, well, that's going to happen too, but not in the way you might expect. So the first thing I want us to do is I want us to hone in on two very powerful techniques that are going to teach you a little bit about how your mind and body interact with each other. And the reason for that is my job as a teacher, my job as a trainer, is to teach you how to become progressively more self-aware so you can exert more control over all the things that push your buttons without your knowing it. So first and foremost, if you get the time, there's the information I'm going to share with you in just a moment comes from a video known as Power Poses by a lady named Amy Cuddy. You can find her TED Talk freely available on YouTube. I highly recommend you reference that video because she has done all the science behind the thing I'm going to teach you. It turns out that when it comes to changing our emotional state, that certain postures and certain breathing patterns will actually cause the hormonal balances in our body to change many times in as little as 2 minutes. And so on a theoretical level, that's cool. On a theoretical level, that's kind of neat, but can we actually, how does that actually help us? Anytime you find yourself going into a state that is not conducive to what you want, So you got to know what you want ahead of time. But anytime you find you're going into a state that's not conducive to what you want, where you need to be more confident, if you assume one of the poses I'm about to teach you, and you hold it for as little as 2 minutes, your blood chemistry will change. The corresponding psycho-emotional state, the feelings in your body, will start to shift to a more confident, assertive, dominant, relaxed state, scientifically. So the first one I'm going to teach you is one we've seen many times before. It's called the Superman or the victory pose. And it looks like this. And we're going to hold it together for 2 minutes, just because. Okay? So I'm going to just hold your head. Now, I want to make a distinction with this one real quick. A lot of times people who are chronically depressed or who have a lot of fear or a lot of victimness in them, a little bit of a victim mindset, or the world is out to get me kind of a mindset, they start off with this strong victory posture, and over the course of several seconds it becomes this. This is not the victory pose. This is the hanging in the dungeon waiting to be tortured pose. So we got to remember that when we want to activate the physiological changes in our body, the hormonal changes in our body, we got to roll that chest up and out. We got to roll those shoulders back. We got to look up. And we got to think victorious thoughts. Now, you don't actually have to think the victorious thoughts or replay victorious ideas in your head for this to work. Just the posture, if you hold it for as little as 2 minutes, based on the studies, will show a 20%, up to a 20% increase in the amount of testosterone your body's going to produce. It's going to show a corresponding drop in the amount of cortisol, which is the stress hormone that your body is going to produce. So holding this posture for as little as 2 minutes will result in you becoming progressively more dominant, confident, assertive, and more relaxed at the same time. And that's important. Okay? Because as you become more relaxed and dominant, people perceive you and respond to you differently. Because all of you is changing at the same time, you won't necessarily perceive the change, but everyone around you will. And the interesting thing about this is that when they tested this, just beyond the blood chemistry ratings, where they took people who assumed these poses and in double-blind tests, put them in the most challenging, grueling, interpersonal environments you can imagine, the people who held these poses always scored consistently higher than the control groups and the people who didn't do them. So this is the first pose. This is the first idea I want you to have. Anytime you're about to do self-work, anytime you're about to do an affirmation, anytime you're about to meet somebody for the first time, do a presentation, find a stall, find a place where you can be alone for as little as 2 minutes and hit that pose. Just hit that pose, okay? That's our first one, and that's awesome, right? That alone will break any state that you're in. Because one of the problems that we have is we don't try to be confident until we feel less than confident. That's the problem, is confidence is always a result of us feeling something else. It's always a result of us feeling anxious or fearful, rather than becoming our baseline. Does that make sense? So if you're going to do confidence building work, if you're going to create that sense of relentless determination combined with an expectation of a positive result, you got to break whatever state you're in so nothing is tainted. But just doing this a few times a day will dramatically change your life. Now, a lot of people know this. I'll give you my pedigree a little bit later, because right now I'm all about getting you functional fast. I consult, I still do as a matter of fact. I do a lot of jury and trial consulting with lawyers and personal injury attorneys. And I had a client who was very nervous about giving a deposition or actually working in front of this one judge who apparently was just a mean, hard to get along with judge. And so I taught him the power pose. And what happened was he would hit, right before he would go into court, he would hit the pose. And he felt dramatically better. He felt a lot more calm in the courtroom. And he did really, really well. But that's and that's kind of cool. But the really cool part was he had a client who was going to be he had a witness that he had to depose or was going to be deposed. And that client was absolutely terrified of testifying. And he also happened to be the coach of a football team, high school football team. And so what I didn't know, I found out this later, was that he taught his witnesses how to hold these power poses. And he did really, really well when he was actually on the stand. And then a few weeks later, he came back with another story. It turns out that particular high school football coach had been the coach of a losing team. They hadn't won a championship in 5 years. And so what happened was, during half times, during breaks, the coach would have his entire football team holding these poses. And they swept the championship that year. So don't underestimate the power of what I'm sharing with you. It can turn losers into winners really quick. And it can create within you the exact right foundation to build on, that you can use to add any state you want, any outcome you want. Anytime you're afraid, anytime you're nervous, anytime you're feeling less than, assume the position. Hold it for as little as 2 minutes. You can hold it longer if you want to. But hold that position for as little as 2 minutes, and your results will change. Now that's step one. That's where we're going to start. Okay? But we got to get the meat involved. We got to get our body kind of playing a little bit. So I'd like you to stop for a moment. I'd like you to use your imagination. This gets us into something I like to call point and click therapy. And the whole idea behind this is that we need to understand that every behavior that we generate, every decision that we make, as rational and logical as we think we are, is based on a feeling in our bodies. It's a feeling that we either want a whole lot more of or a whole lot less of. And each of those feelings is like a holographic container, a bubble with massive, massive amounts of information in it. Now, we're not going to get too far into that right now, just the functional stuff. The bottom line is all of that information that your neurology is processing emerges from a single point, a feeling point. We call that the somatic address. So when you have a feeling, when you have something that's holding you back, or you're seeing pictures in your head, it's not the picture that's the problem. It's the way that picture or that voice is making you feel. And so as we change those things inside, as I give you the tools in the second part of this video to go in and systematically change all of that, everything else will change. But the first thing we want to do is we want to look back again at state control. Remember, confidence on a functional level is relentless determination combined with the expectation of a positive result. The most important part of that is the relentless determination. You see, there's been many times in your life when you've been faced with something you had absolutely no confidence in your ability to achieve. Every time I ask an audience, I ask by a show of hands, how many people have ever had something that they absolutely had no confidence in their ability to do, but it had to be done? And you found out, you knuckled down, and you went and you did it, and you achieved the goal, even though you had no confidence. And then I asked them, I'm going to ask you the same thing, just to think about this for a moment. When you think about that, when you think of those moments where there was something that had to get done, but you didn't have the confidence to do it, but it had to get done, so you knuckled down and you did it anyway. When did the confidence actually come? If you're like most people, you'll discover the confidence came after you did the work. And that's the secret. You've got to get started. You've got to take action. The best GPS in the world can't help you if you stay in one spot. A perfect something, or an imperfect something, is always better than a perfect nothing. So keep that in mind. You've got to combine whatever programming that we're doing with taking the steps. And if you do that, you're going to find out you're going to be more successful more rapidly. So that being said, let's go into our next technique. This technique I like to call it the magic frame. And what it does for you is it's going to teach you a little bit about your nervous system and how your nervous system creates your pictures, your internal environment. The things that make you afraid, the things that hold you back, the voices in your head are all under your conscious control. But in order for you to fully get that, you've got to create an interface where all of that can happen. So here's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to think of something I'm going to give you a very specific scenario for me, okay? I want you to remember a time in your life when you saw something you really, really wanted. And you decided you were going to get that thing no matter what. Come hell or high water, you made a decision, and then you made a plan, and you put that plan into action, and you nailed it. Home run. I want you to go back into that moment for me, if you will. I want you to see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, smell and taste what you smelled and you tasted. But most importantly, what I want you to do is I want you to assume that posture that happened in that moment when you realized you nailed it, when you were the top dog, you made that goal, you got the result, you made the achievement, whatever it was. I want you to stand that way. I want you to breathe the way you were breathing and let those feelings come flooding into you. And as you do that, I want you to notice something. Where in your body do you feel it? I want you to go ahead and point to it. And I'd like you to use your imagination, if you would. Imagine that floating somewhere in the space around you is a picture that represents that amazing feeling. I'd like you to just go out, reach out with one of your hands, and touch it. That's right. Just pretend. Trust your first impression. We're going to talk about the dynamics of an unconscious response in just a minute. But as you touch that moment, I want you to take both of your hands now, trace the outline of that image so you know exactly how big it is. And then just for fun, grab it. And just like you would expand the windows on your iPhone or on your touchscreen at home, I want you to make it as big as a drive-in movie theater screen. Notice what happens to the feeling in your body. And bring it back. Notice what happens to the feeling. Grab it again. Keep the picture exactly the same size. And now what I want you to do is pull it closer to your body and notice what happens to the feeling. Lift it up over your head. Pull it down around you like a big blanket. Notice what happened. Did the feeling get stronger or weaker? How did it change? And when you're ready, just for fun, you can have this feeling back in whatever degree or whatever level of intensity you want in just a moment. But for just a moment, I want you to unwrap that feeling, lift it back up over your head. Now, I don't know where you live, but here in California, I used to live in Florida, so I have a moment. We play a lot of frisbee. I want you to imagine this thing's now shaped like a frisbee. I want you to just throw it all the way back over your head until it disappears behind the horizon. Now scan your body. Notice what happened to the feelings. Did they get stronger? Did they get weaker? Did they stay the same? It doesn't really matter. There's no right or wrong. Each of us has a unique way that we process these particular drills. Now, the interesting is it is a drill. The more you play with this, the more you play pretend, like when you were a little kid playing toy robber or toy cop or cowboys and Indians at home, the more rapidly your neurology is going to evolve and you're going to have far more control over this dashboard. Lift your hands up now and imagine your hands are now the world's most powerful frisbee magnets. Once you imagine you could suck that picture right back into your hands. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to play. Take a few moments and play with your own neurology. I want you to move that picture around you. Make it bigger, make it smaller, pull it closer, put it inside of you. Put it over your left shoulder or your right shoulder. And notice how each and every time you move that picture around, the feeling changes in some way. Take all the time you need in the next few moments to really get that. Notice how it changes. And I want you to keep playing with it. I want you to experiment with it until you find the exact position, size, and shape that gives you the sensation and the intensity level that you want, that gives you the best feeling humanly possible. And when you find that, fix it in place. Fix it in place. And as you do, notice how that feeling flows into your body. From your body into your bloodstream, from your bloodstream to every place your blood goes. Those feelings will start to flow. You don't need to measure it or manage it or make it happen faster. Just notice that process taking place. Let it flow into every cell, and every nerve, and every DNA molecule. Reprogramming those DNA molecules, turning each and every one of them into a little pleasure factory. Each cell creating and multiplying and magnifying that amazing sensation until every cell in your body is generating more and more and more of these amazing feelings. Now, you don't need to measure it, manage it, or make it happen faster. Just notice the process taking place. Allow it to install itself completely. And when you know it's reached an intensity level where it's impossible to turn off, try to turn it off and notice what happens instead. Many people discover very, very quickly that that sucker just keeps getting stronger. And that's fine. because that's a great place to be. You're stuck feeling good now. Isn't that cool? And it just gets better. So what I've just discovered and what I've just taught you in a very short time is this: that every feeling that you have in your body is pushing your buttons. It's changing how you relate to the world and the people around you. And the fastest way to change it is through your posture and your breathing. And once you've done that, if you can point to where any lingering sensations are in your body, and you touch it, you reach out and touch that picture, you now have the willpower capabilities, the idea of what we call superior thinking, the ability to change the coding system that your nervous system uses to create that change inside and make it whatever you want. That is control. That is confidence. That is the ability to modulate your state, to become whatever you need to be to get your outcome, to get your result, no matter what. Now, in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, we're going to begin a process based on a new technology, holographic memory resolution, combined with some conversational hypnosis and neurolinguistics and things like that. You don't need to know any of that. All you need to be able to do is relax. Follow the instructions and just play pretend. Because if you can point to where you feel it, you can change it. So, let's take a few moments, practice these exercises a couple of times, and when you are ready, come back, restart the video, and we'll move on to the next part of our process. I'll be right here.